Hello and welcome to this Nova Systems webinar on Assembly Visualization. Assembly Visualization is a tool which enables you to sort and colour your assembly based on criteria that you pick in order to better understand what is expensive, for example, what is heavy, or what is taking a long time to rebuild. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump into SolidWorks where I've got a couple of assemblies open, and we're going to start with Assembly Visualization. Assembly Visualization, given away a bit by the name, is only available in assemblies. We can find it under the Evaluate tab, Assembly Visualization, or if you'd rather use the menus, Tools, Assembly Visualization. So if I start that up, what it's doing at the moment is it is sorting my part based on the SolidWorks mass and going from blue to red, from heaviest to lightest. So you can see I've got my heaviest part here, and I can select it in the tree and highlight it, down to my lightest part here, again select it and highlight it in the tree. If I decide that blue isn't my thing, I might decide to change the red colour, change it to yellow if I want to get nice high contrast. So now we're going from blue to yellow. If I want to add an additional colour, so for example I fancy a green for the mid-range parts, I can add the green as well. I can add as many colours as I want, and I can be as interesting with the colour choices as I want, up to the range of colours SolidWorks can produce. On the other hand, what I might want to do is sort it so that all the items that weigh the same are the same colour, in which case I can right click over in this empty section on the left and choose Group Identical. And now all my parts that weigh the same amount, even if they're different part numbers or different configurations of the same part, will be the same colour. It does choose an interesting range of colours, so I'm going to choose a Reset All to get rid of all of that. So we'll reset that back, and again we've got our red to blue. Now, one point to note is a lot of these are very, very blue, even though the weights change quite a lot between here and here. The reason behind that is the top base, my red item, is so much heavier than everything else. The colour change between top base and the next heaviest item is quite a significant one. Now, that can be quite annoying, so I might decide to move my red arrow so that actually red starts at card tray, and I get a much greater range of colours at that. I can also choose to use the rollback bars or freeze bars to drag it down so it doesn't consider the top item at all. So it doesn't consider it, and you'll also notice it hides it completely from the view. So this can be handy when you don't want certain items to be even thought about at all. You can get rid of them completely. Now that enables the user to have an idea of what we can do with colours. Let's have a look at what we can do with the columns. So file name and quantity are always there. You can't edit those, but after that you can have up to 5 custom columns for other things. So I've got mass. Let's bring in a couple of others. So if I add the column, and I'm going to choose description. Now the reason that was in the little top section is I've used it before. If I drag my columns around, we can see these are the description properties that are in my part file. So I've created these as custom properties. If we add another column, I can bring in cost. It's happened to pick the right one for me, that's handy. Again, this is one I was using before. Cost is another custom property from my files. Now, I might want to bring in something that's a little bit less common, so let's go and find from the More list property. So I could choose any of my sustainability properties, any of my SolidWorks properties, or any of my custom properties that exist in my files. I'm actually interested in SolidWorks rebuild time, an item which doesn't exist in many other locations. So I'm going to bring that through and hit OK. So now I can sort my parts by rebuild time. So you can see the legs by far are the longest at just over 2 seconds, whereas everything else is pretty quick. I might also be interested in something which is for other users, so the assembly cost. So if we add a further column, my last extra column, and what I want to do is have a look at the assembly cost of things. So not how much an individual item costs to make, but how much it costs to make all of the items that are going to go into my assembly. So for example, these C tiles, there are quite a few of them in the assembly. Right, they might not cost very much each, but what is the overall cost? So to do this, I'm going to need to use a formula. So I'm going to have more. I'm going to choose a property, and I'm going to want to choose quantity, and I want to choose cost. So we choose use formula. I select one of my properties. I'm going to start with cost, and it puts the property name in the bottom section here. I'm then going to put a multiplication symbol in. I'm only adding the spaces for visibility. You don't actually need to add them. And now I'm going to choose quantity, and it'll add the quantity in after it. I need to give it a name, and I'm going to call this ASCII cost. Please be aware that if you've used a property name, column heading name before, and it is in your list of quick picks, you won't be able to rename it, reuse the name with a different set of details because the column headers have to be individual. So I'm going to click OK there. And now we've got assembly cost, and I can sort by that. So we can see that my base upstand is the most expensive item in the assembly, which are these items here, and there's 3 more of them around the back of the model, even though they're not actually the most expensive item individually. And in fact, to make things a little bit clearer, I'm going to drag those backwards and forwards so that I get my costs together. So we now got the most expensive assembly item is not the most expensive individual item. And that's going to be quite important from a manufacturing point of view. You quickly find out that money saved in the base upstand part is worth more than money saved in my tabletop part, which is the most expensive individual item, because I'll save it 4 times. So very quickly we can start to narrow down on what's going on. Now, we've talked about how we can make our assembly pretty colours and how we can get a whole load of information in this window. What can we do with it after we've done that? Well, we can actually save the information out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Save As. We get a range of different file types we can save it out as. And I'm going to pick PDF just because it's the quickest thing to save. Now, we can also choose whether we're going to save it as top level only, parts level, parts only, or indented, in the same way that you can do with a bill of materials in a SolidWorks drawing. Actually, for this particular assembly, everything's at the top level, so it doesn't matter which one I pick. I'm going to hit Save. We can see that I've been preparing for this webinar, so I'm going to replace that file. Just let that save, and then I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to open up the PDF file. So we can now see the layout as we had it in the assembly visualization. We've got file name, quantity, mass, rebuild time, description, cost, and assembly cost. And what we can also see is all the columns have been sized neatly to take the items that are in them. So this can be really handy for passing it on to other people, putting it in Word documents or in manuals or emails or whatever it happens to be. It also is a nice easy reference where we can see all the information. And actually, if you look carefully, you can see down the bottom of the assembly cost column, which was my sorting value, I've got something which is 0 value. So quite quickly this becomes a way to see, right, okay, there's still work to be done there. Clearly you can't have something in which doesn't cost anything. And in fact, if we read the description, block part to be replaced with drawer assembly, you can see that I've actually identified it by the description that more work needs to be done as well. So it becomes a nice easy way to check whether everything's been finished and all the properties exist in things. So if I come back to SolidWorks, what we might want to do is also get this information to use elsewhere in SolidWorks, because obviously if I click Assembly Visualization, all my information disappears. Fortunately, it keeps it all for when I go back to it. So if I sort by rebuild time, so just check that that one is the rebuild time column, I want to sort with the highest value at the top. Now I might say that actually I'm only interested in items that take more than 1/4 of a second to rebuild, so we can drag up to here. We've only got 3 items left, multiple copies of those 3 items, but 3 items left. I can now create a display state with this. Brief summary for those who don't use display state. Display state's a way of recording information by visibility and colour of parts for use in specific purposes. So in this case I'm recording the visibility of the parts for the ones that I want to make sure I do some edits on to try and simplify them, see if I can improve the rebuild time, and maybe take some details out if they're not necessary. To save a display state, hit on the drop down again and we've got Add Display State. So if I choose Add Display State, it doesn't appear to make any difference here, but when I come out of Assembly Visualization and go to my display state list, which is always at the bottom of your configuration tab, we've now got a new one called Visualization Display State 1. If I double click on that, it'll hide the rest of my parts and just give me the visibility of the parts I decided to create the display state in. So this now makes it very easy to say, right, okay, now I need to work on this part, I need to make some simplification to this to try and make it lighter and quicker, or my red parts are the ones which take the longest, so I want to concentrate any changes I do on the legs and try and make those easier for SolidWorks to rebuild. So I might have to go in and have a look what it is that's taking the time on those parts. Right, if I go back to display state 4 just so we can see everything and go back into assembly visualization, we've got all of our parts back again because I changed back to different display state. We can now come back in and we could make further changes, but we've sort of seen a lot of the columns that I can create. What I want to do is have a look at some of the other features. So unit precision, I can choose how many decimal places it goes to. In this case I'm looking at the assembly cost column, so 2 is absolutely the right amount. Value bars. The value bars basically are just trying to give you, as well as a colour guide, give you a visual length of time guide, if that makes sense, for how long something takes. And you can turn these on or off if you find them distracting. So if I sort by assembly cost, we'll get a better range of those coming down. We can also choose whether we're going to see a flat or a nested view. Now, in order to show that, I'm actually going to come out of this assembly. I'm just going to swap into another assembly, which should all be very familiar to this particular assembly. Come in, and we're going to choose to sort by mass. So again, we've got a nice link there, and we can choose whether we're going to look at flat nested view, which is this, or whether we're going to look at an assembly view. And the assembly view basically rounds up your sub-assemblies and just uses those instead of the individual parts. So for example, here we've got the whole of the handle assembly acting as one single item from a mass point of view. So this can be really handy when you're trying to get information out and you're doing multiplications, because you can look at it both using the sub-assembly as a single item if you buy it out, or the sub-assembly as a number of parts if you make them all. So you can sort of round up the quantities like that. That's pretty much it. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask or give us a ring. So, thank you very much for watching.